Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We are positively into football season, but it's always baseball season somewhere in the mind of an Aparicio. So when I was reached to by some mutual friends in Chicago, Illinois, where I had some delicious Pequod's pizza last week, as well as the Ravens' victory over the Bears. Still was eating that the other day, as a matter of fact. We're going back to Chicago right now. I did not get out anytime recently to the south side. I know there's been a little resurrection of baseball there. Someone shared a Luis Aparicio 1970-71 powder blue red era jersey that I shared that was just the greatest picture ever about a month ago on a baseball vintage. And somehow, some way, it's all coming back to me. There is a book out now called Chili Dog MVP about Dick Allen. Remember Dick Allen? I had his baseball card when I was a kid. He played on a lot of teams and sort of had a reputation to some degree, and I always remember if the cow can't eat it, I'm not going to play on it. Quotes out of Philadelphia, I guess. These guys are historians, and there's a big movement to put Dick Allen into the Hall of Fame, posthumously, sadly, and Todd Radom, a good baseball buddy of mine, incredible artist. We come on, we argue about good jerseys and bad jerseys, and great jerseys like the Astros and bad behavior like the Astros. John Owens joins us now, one of the authors, as well as we got two authors. Sometimes I get one. I got David Fletcher as well. Both Southside guys. Am I fair to say that, being White Sox people?
Definitely.
Well, I have a Southside.
Go ahead.
I have Southside connection because I went to medical school and went at Rush, so I had close connection that way.
John, how about you?
And I was born and raised on the South Side. I went to school at a place called De La Salle Institute, which is 3 blocks from Sox Park.
Well, I get the dates on all this stuff, right? So I think about Luis because I get asked about it every time I'm at the Midway Airport. I pull my ID out. They're like, related? Nowhere else in the world. Just not even in O'Hare. They don't do it there. It's too far north, I think. But for my whole life, I've had the Aparicio thing, right? So jerseys follow around. He's my cousin. No, last time I saw him was at Comiskey Park at the All-Star game almost a decade and a half ago, whatever it was. So I would just say this. I thought Dick Allen and Luis rubbed each other. They didn't really come all that close. And I think when you look at the White Sox in the late 60s, they were awful when Luis went back there. And I don't think you guys are old enough for the 59 Go-Go's, or am I being too kind to you?
I was 6 years old.
You remember it?
I remember it, yes.
It made you a baseball fan?
Yes.
John, how about you?
I was born in 65, but I knew all about the Go-Go Sox. I mean, the Sox were the team for like 2 decades in the 50s and 60s. So everybody knew about, Little Louie and Nellie Fox and all the great players, Billy Pierce on that 59 team.
Well, I guess this story sort of picks that up, right? From that passion that's left over. And I had to read after Frank Robinson died about my cousin's battles with Bill Veeck and then coming back and then leaving again and then going to Boston. And so, I've done a lot of research on that part. And I was born in 68, just so you know. So Luis, when he came to Baltimore, brought 2 cousins because he wanted to bring family here, and I've since read newspaper articles in New York papers about him wanting to bring his family to Baltimore and how well he was received here and how a person of color as well as Frank Robinson was welcomed in Baltimore by the Hofberger family, who had endured the Holocaust and did not have hatred in their heart for people at a time when baseball was sort of littered with such a thing. So I'll let you guys pick up the story because I'm really interested. I mean, I never met Dick Allen, was around Dick Allen. I know him from a baseball card and a reputation as being, whatever, malcontent, move place to place. But I read Lords of the Realm. I sort of know how, player transactions work back in this era.
Well, talk about your cousin Louie. I mean, I got to see him play as a kid, and so I remember him well. I was a big fan of his. He was actually the initial piece in the building block for the resurrection of the White Sox for the 1972 season. So the new general manager, player personnel, who eventually became the Orioles general manager, Roland Heeman, one of his initial trades was trading your cousin for Mike Andrews and Luis Alvarado to the Boston Red Sox in December of 1970. So that was sort of a building block
And the White Sox were terrible, right? Like they acquired Louis. The Orioles went off the deep edge in '67, right? You mentioned not being born. I was born in '68, so I heard all about '66 here. So, it's very much like the '59 Sox. And obviously '69, '70, '71, I'm born in Baltimore. I don't remember those years, but I came on pretty hard in '73, '74, right around then. And I know Goose Gossage had that baseball card back in '73 wearing the great white and red jerseys that they wore. But you're specific to 72 with Dickie Allen. Am I correct in saying that they were really a breakthrough year that, quite frankly, they didn't win. They weren't in the playoffs. So, I'm always familiar with the playoff teams, but in that particular time, this would be his bid for the Hall of Fame after all he did in Philadelphia, right?
Right. Well, the thesis that we present in the book is that he helped save the team because the team, the White Sox, as we mentioned, they had those years in the 50s and 60s where they were the most popular team in the city and they won for 17 years straight. And then they went off the deep end. And by 1970, they were drawing less than 500,000 people. So there was talk that they might be moving. And in fact, as we detail in the book, owner Art Allen had a handshake deal with Bud Selig, now, the former commissioner, who was trying to get baseball back to Milwaukee after the Braves left in '65. And he had his eyes set on the White Sox. And there was a handshake deal in place in late 1969 to get the White Sox.
See, I never knew this. This is an incredible. Well, the pilots were happening then, right? The Expos were happening then. They were trying to expand, but they were kind of screwed up. Dead ball era, right? There's no runs being scored at that point. I love the notion of the 66 and 69 and 70 and 71 Orioles. Anyone I talk to, any picture you see, there's 8,000 people out there in Blue Moon Odom's on the mound, and they're both 95 win teams and whatever in that era, that baseball was not well attended in the late 60s. And I guess Vietnam, civil unrest, cities, Detroit, like there was a lot of things that make this even thicker given the color of Dick Allen's skin, right?
That's correct. That's a centerpiece of the book is that Dick had overcome so much in his career, especially, and he started out in the minor leagues at Little Rock. The Phillies didn't prepare him for that. And he had overcome so much racism there when he got brought up to the big league club.
Where was he from? Where was he born and raised?
From Wampum, Pennsylvania, which is in the coal country, Western Pennsylvania, very integrated community. Very close to kind of a lot of sports figures, Newcastle, Joe Namath country, Chuck Tanner, the manager of the White Sox, and eventually the manager of Pittsburgh, grew up in Newcastle. So a very nestled Western Pennsylvania hills country, but very.
He's probably he probably played football, did he? Or did he not? He's probably a hell of an athlete, right?
He was a hell of a basketball player. He won the championship.
Well, everybody that played baseball in that area, especially players of color, they didn't just play baseball. Jim Brown, they talk about football. Everybody will tell you he's the best lacrosse player that ever lived, right?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Syracuse. There you go. See, you're teaching me and I'm teaching you. John Owens is here. David Fletcher's here. They're both authors. They're in South Chicago and from South Chicago. And the book is about Dickie Allen, Rich Allen, Dick Allen. Tell me about the quote that I've been on the radio 30 years as of next month. December 13th, it'll be 30 years. I can't begin to tell you every time Dick Allen's name came up, the quote that's associated with artificial turf. John, can you give me a little history? Is that a Philadelphia quote?
I think that's a Philadelphia quote, and it represents his love, for horses as well, because he was an expert in horse racing. He and his brother was a longtime trainer, and Dick owned, if I'm not mistaken, he owned a horse. Doc can help me out with that.
Yes, he did. He owned a horse farm outside of Philadelphia, and they, after baseball, was in the horse business.
Well, for him in this breakthrough years, bring me back to 72, right? Because anybody in my audience that's old enough or cares enough about baseball would know Orioles of 69, disappointing. Orioles of 70, good stuff. Orioles of 71, Clemente Stargell, not so good. And then the 72 White Sox, I think of the Detroit Tigers of that period. I would say that my first baseball memories were 1973, and that would be like Bud Harrelson and Pete Rose and the trash incident and all of that. It's Rusty Staub in the World Series in 73. The 72 thing's a little fuzzier to me, only other than they had great friggin' uniforms, by the way. Like, that era, those White Sox unis, I'll give it to the Padres, I'll give it to the Astros, there's some great uniforms, and I've seen Louis in a couple of weird throwbacks of that era, uniforms he never really wore, and sort of the Harold Baines socks, not the shorts, the weird Eddie Goodell, but the era before that, the baby blues and the white and red, the Bill Meltons is what I call them, right? This is the era you're talking about, and there's so many colorful characters in your book. Harry Carey was doing White Sox games then, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. He's second year in the White Sox was 1972, and he's a major character in the book. And we talk about, how he basically, him and Dick Allen, they launched their careers together. Harry had been, kicked out of the Cardinals in 69, 70, and he did 1 year, 70 in Oakland, and he came to Chicago, had a deal where he only got $60,000, but he was negotiated a attendance clause that he got bonuses, and he made it. And so we just talk about a collection of characters. It's not just a baseball book. It's about what was happening in the world then, especially in Chicago with plantation politics. But your cousin Louis, he played on the 1970 White Sox. They lost 106 games, 50 games under 500, and they only drew less than 500,000. Flip it forward 2 years, the White Sox were 87 and 67, second best team in the American League, better than every team in the American League East. And they almost won the pennant that year, but because of Melton's injury, they Dick didn't have any protection. But the White Sox did take the lead in the American League West late.
Did the A's win the West in 72?
They did. They won the West. But for me, your cousin could tell you when he was there in 70 this last year, this place was empty. They had 500 fans and nights in September of 1970. Flash forward to 1972, they were drawing 30,000 games.
Well, what happened explain to me the late 60s, and you said plantation politics, and look, I got a really, really shitty baseball team here, bro, right? 107 losses this year. We're in the middle of it. I live 2 blocks away. I couldn't get my condo away the last 3 years. We have race riots. You guys were a part of the game that nobody went to back in 2015 during Freddie Gray here. Had a lot of the Chicago media on during the course of time. Give me a picture of how little Louis 10 years later couldn't get anybody to come buy a ticket, and the picture of what the White Sox, and those great jerseys, by the way, 1970. Those baby blue and red, they look great. And then I find that they lost 107 games. It feels a little different about it. But they look good on the bubblegum cards. But what happened to make it? Bill Veeck run the team into the ground. Why wouldn't people come?
Well, I mean, it's a combination of things, but the fact is that White Sox Park is located in a historic South Side community, a near South Side community. And that community was going through some change, like, the country was going through change in the late 60s. Chicago's a historically segregated city, and surrounding White Sox Park were communities of color primarily, at least on one side, that were starting to deteriorate a little bit. So there was concern about safety. There was concern about safety at the games.
And I wouldn't think ownership would ever try to leverage that into a move to Milwaukee or anything, right?
That was one issue. That they cited, and that maybe this location wasn't great for a professional baseball team. Maybe we should look at other locations. So that definitely made a difference in terms of attendance, along with other teams, along with the fact that the team was declining. Their last competitive year before Dick came to the team was 1967, the historic 1967 year when 4 teams were neck and neck throughout much of the season. But by 1967, you also had race riots in cities throughout the country, including Chicago, and that played a role in disappointing attendance for a team that was competitive, and it just continued to decline in 1968, 1969, and 1970.
Well, fellas, I'm here in Baltimore. I was there the day Peter Angelos bought the team. We're 30 years into this now, 30 years into Camden Yards, and I've seen the deterioration what bad ownership can do. Speak to the ownership of the White Sox at that point, and you're a couple years out on Minnie Minoso and guys wearing shorts, Chet Lemon. I go through all the flavors of all of this down on the South Side. As a matter of fact, one of my great sports memories, and I've done incredible stuff and been places and all that. My buddy Russ Fletcher and I, in the summer 1989, drove out to Chicago because we wanted to go to Comiskey Park before they ripped it down, before they built the other mistake across the street. And so we went out there and sat through a doubleheader and drank old style during a rain delay out in right field in the bleachers that I had seen above the bullpen, and all. But I have such colorful memories of Comiskey Park. And what a neat little stadium like Tiger Stadium, the old school little stadiums that we got to sit in when I was young. But the ownership there, sort of legendarily Carnival, and this is the era where Charlie Finley's trying to get orange baseballs going. And they had trouble selling tickets. Morgana's kissing people. There's stuff happening in the early 70s, but for the team to be saved and still be there 50 years later, give me a little piece of that summer and Dick Allen's role in this.
Well, Dick brought back the fans because he was Michael Jordan before there was Michael Jordan in Chicago. He electrified the place. I saw 40 games that year, and I was 17 years old, and it was amazing to see their turnaround. Like I said, I saw your cousin play when it was empty in Comiskey Park. In 2 years, this team was competitive. They played exciting baseball. The 72 team ended up having the MVP, Dick. They had the pitcher of the year in Wilbur Wood, who threw 376 innings that year. He was the ultimate Iron Man. They had the manager of the year in Chuck Tanner. They had the executive of the year in Roland Heeman. And they had the runner-up fireman of the year in Terry Forster, who was only frickin' 20 years old. This was before he was a fat tub of goo. He's an amazing pitcher. He has the highest batting average in Major League Baseball history for anybody over 50 at bats, 397. And remember, this is pre-DH. And so it was an exciting team. It brought fans back. And we haven't talked about one of the biggest characters in this book was Nancy Faust. It was her third year. They moved her from the outfield Oregon area to behind home plate. And she invented walk-up music with Dick Allen, with Jesus Christ Superstar. She changed the whole frame of entertainment in the ballparks because of that year. And so that's kind of the
walk-up Oregon, but Oregon was always there. It just was to be stopped once the game started, right? Like you didn't hear, but you heard dun, 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 dun. That went on during at bats, right?
It did, but she personalized it, and she played to Harry Carey. They were a great tandem together. Remember, Take Me Out to the Ball Game started with Nancy and Harry at Comiskey Park. She also started in '77, the Na Na Hey Hey Goodbye, the ultimate sports taunting song. This is all product.
But she had nothing to do with Disco Demolition, right? Just making sure, just for historical purposes.
No, actually, I always kid her about it. I do blame her because during the middle of it, she started playing "Do You Think I'm Sexy," the theme song for Rod Stewart did the parody.
There's a little bit of disco going on there, just a little bit.
She did. Let's just say she inflamed the fans. But that's what she was there for. She changed entertainment. And that's what made the whole thing to go to Comiskey Park was you didn't want to miss an at bat with Dick Allen. He had an amazing year, especially the last year before the change to the DH rule. And so it was just that chemistry that you changed it overnight and made it the place to be and fun and exciting. And they erased a 8.5 game lead July 31st with the A's, and by August 12th, they were in first place. And just was a fun season and just great, colorful characters. And obviously, our main centerpiece is the Chili Dog home run, which was in June. I'll let John talk about that a little bit later. But just fun, entertaining team. And Dick found a home. He found acceptance. He felt human again. It was very, very much a crowd that drew a lot of Blacks, Hispanics, and it was something Dick noticed, which he hadn't experienced before. And I can't say how a very exciting, special season, special team, special people.
David Fletcher, along with John Owens, authors in the book is Chili Dog MVP, Dick Allen. the 72 White Sox and transforming Chicago, where I had some great pizza last week. The forward in the book written by Goose Gossage, and a great cover. Todd Radom, a pal of mine. Last time he was on, he went to the Orioles Blue Jays game in Buffalo. So we had a little go about that. So you can go back, check that out at Baltimore Positive if you wish. John, I want to talk about Dick's reputation, because I talked to my wife about this before I did the show. I'm like, yeah, I got some guys on top about Dickie Allen and great jerseys in the South Side, and Aparicio and the statue out in center field and the old stadium and the new stadium and like all that stuff, because we're baseball people around here. I said he's sort of like Albert Bell, Dave Kingman, sort of this power-hitting guy that bounced around. My cousin was a guy as a Hall of Famer that was given around like a hot potato at the end of his career, played on a lot of bad teams, didn't always have the greatest reputation with the media or with people or teammates. I later learn around that he got picked on a little bit, being Little Louie and Hot Foot and Mo Drabowski. Probably didn't appreciate that. But Dick Allen moved around and was this great player and never got a Hall of Fame sniff because I guess he never sniffed around reporters enough like Jim Rice in Boston or others to be given that sort of status. I covered Albert Bell. I know what a prick he was. You know what I mean? I was around it every day. You guys were Southside. He spent 5 minutes there before he came here, all that. I've been around miserable people. I've been cussed out by Reggie Jackson when I was a kid. All this stuff. Tell me about Dick a little bit, because the reputation as a guy like me that's been in the media 30 years, never met him, baseball card, you do a book on him. He's not in the Hall of Fame. John, I know enough to know it probably has something to do with the color of his skin, or Marvin Miller, in the other case, just deeds done on behalf of someone that he pissed people off. And I think Dick Allen probably pissed some people off along Life's Highway.
Right. You know, the reputation of being a malcontent was totally unfounded. The fact is that Dick Allen was one of the most admired players of his generation, among other players. He was a unifying figure in the clubhouse for the teams that he played with, most notably the White Sox, which was a young team when he got there. And he was a brilliant teacher. Goose Gossage, among others, said that he was the greatest player he ever played with, and the most giving player. He taught him how to pitch inside. Goose credited Dick for teaching him.
Well, it's amazing because he arrived on this really crappy team, right? Like it was a sentence to get sent there. Like when Augie Bush sent Steve Carlton to Philadelphia to win 27 of their 54 games in this era, it was to punish you, right? I mean, being on the south side of Chicago where nobody's there and they lost 100 last year, this wasn't a good gig, sort of, kind of, right?
Right, and in fact, he originally was hedging about coming to Chicago, but he had a friend and he had an ally, and Chuck Tanner, who, as Doc mentioned earlier, grew up with the Allen family and convinced him to come to Chicago. And once he got here, and got the feedback from the players and the fans, he fell in love with the city and the team. But the thing about Dick more than anything else is that he was an incredible player. He was arguably the best player of his, the period between 64 and 74. He was a 7-time All-Star, had an OPS above 850 every year during that period, and that's something no other player in that time can claim. And this is during the era of the pitcher, and his competition was people like, Hank Aaron and Willie Mays and McCovey and Billy Williams and Harmon Killebrew. And he was the very best. And he was a 5-tool player too, which not many people realize. He could do everything well. And
steal bases, 19 bases in 1972.
He stole bases when they mattered. And he was a brilliant base runner too, in cutting the bases. He studied, he had a reputation for arriving late at games, and that was in fact true. He would show up at games maybe a half an hour before. He never took batting practice, but he had a great reason. He said, why should I take batting practice and see a pitch at half speed that would keep me from doing my best during a game when a pitcher's throwing 100 miles an hour? So that was his reasoning. It worked for him.
David, I want to talk to you. I looked down these list of names. You've mentioned Roland Heeman, who I've had a long relationship with from his resurrection of the Orioles in the 80s and the losing season of 88 and all that. Phil Regan's name is in here. The Vulture was a manager here when I began my radio career back in the mid-'90s, and I loved him. And boy, I think he's Kevin Bacon, man. I mean, he was on a $66. He's been with everybody, right? I mean, and I look up and you found Phil Regan as a part of this story, too.
Yeah, I mean, I love Phil. I loved him when he was on the Cubs, loved him when he was on the Sox. It's actually a funny story because Roland Heeman was not the GM. He was the director of player personnel. And his boss was a guy who used to be a Purdue and Northwestern athletic director named Stu Holcomb. And they basically didn't tell their boss, who was in the hospital having a hernia operation, they're going to take Phil Regan from the Cubs for a $20,000 waiver fee. And that we talk about that in the book. Phil was great about it. We got a great picture of Dick and Allen and Bill Milton and Phil Regan in the book, which we're really proud to have in the book. But Phil Regan was another character, and he was part of it, and he gave us a really good orientation about being picked up and about deals. This is again before free agency, and so I think he adds a lot of color to the book.
Fellas, I've enjoyed the visit. I hope everybody goes out and reads about a Hall of Fame candidacy that people and I go up and down the river at the Hall of Fame every year. Who's in, who's out, steroids, the whole deal. But Dick Allen, certainly the stats would bear it out. Chili Dog MVP is the book. Dick Allen, the '72 White Sox, and transforming one of my favorite towns, Chicago, Illinois. The guests, John Owens, David Fletcher. I can't wait to take a look at it. I appreciate you guys reaching to me and telling some South Side stories. Anytime I can get out there and get some pizza and spend a little time in the second city, I'll do that. And I appreciate the time today. Thanks for coming on, fellas.
If I could make one final quick comment about
Sure.
your cousin. Actually, Roland Heeman tried to trade your cousin in 1970 to the Cardinals for Dick Allen, and Bing Devine turned him down. So I don't think your cousin probably knew that.
Could have played under the fresh Gateway Arch out there. I'm trying to think of how that would have worked out for him in St. Louis. Boston played with some great players, but not great teams in that era. But he couldn't hang on long enough for Lynn and Rice to get there. Missed it by that much. But had a little Tiant, little Yaz. As a little boy, I got a Red Sox baseball in '73, and it's got Fisk, Tiant, like all these Cepeda, Cecil Cooper, all of this great stuff. So I love baseball, and I love talking baseball with baseball people. I appreciate you guys coming on, man. Thank you very much. There we go. John Owens, David Fletcher. The book is Chili Dog MVP in Chicago. And if nothing else, if that jersey doesn't sell the book from Todd Radin, man, that beautiful Bill Melton 73 Wilbur Wood red, white pinstripe thing, I dig it. I am Nestor. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.